Welcome to the ChiroSphere podcast, where we talk about all things chiropractic and some things, well, not so chiropractic. I'm Dr. Ray Foxworth, founder and CEO of ChiroHealth USA. Today, we're joined by an incredible guest, Dr. Irum Tahir. She's an international speaker, chiropractor, entrepreneur, and business coach with a passion for making a global impact. From Spanish Harlem to rural Pakistan, Madagascar, India, and even working with Syrian refugees in Jordan, Dr. Tahir has helped bring chiropractic care to thousands. Recognized as one of the top 100 entrepreneurs under 30 by the Obama administration and honored at both the White House and the United Nations, Dr. Tahir is a powerhouse in healthcare entrepreneurship. Her TED Talk has reached over 500,000 views, and today she's here to share her insights with us. Welcome, Iram, and all I have to say is, wow, what do you do in your part-time? You know,
Thank
today,
you. Thank you.
you bet. Yeah. Just a joy to have you with us. We're going to dig into about what you do today and what you have done. But I got to ask, like Simon Sinek always talks about, what's your why? What is it that has driven you to accomplish so much? Quite frankly, at such a young age.
Thank you. That is a great question. Nobody has ever asked me that question in all of the interviews, all the podcasts, all the things I've ever done. So thank you for that. So what's my why? I'd say is that it's really driving the force towards healthcare. What true healthcare is, not sick care. So getting people out of that sick mindset, that mentality of victimized, and that idea that health has to come from outside of them, right? Health comes from within us. And so, I remember when I kind of stumbled across chiropractic, I literally immediately fell in love with it. And to me, I believe every person needs chiropractic care from the cradle to the grave. Unless there's red flags and they're not a good candidate for it, I believe every single person can benefit from chiropractic care. And it really should be something that's incorporated into our day-to-day, our monthly, our weekly, our yearly lives, as a form of self-care and improving our overall body, mind, and soul, honestly. And so for me, I want to get people out of pain, but I want them to really work on loving themselves, truly loving themselves, caring about themselves. And I think when they get chiropractic care, for example, or if they do some kind of act of self-care, it's really an act of self-love. And so, that's one of my major whys. And I think my other why is I want to really change the world. I want to change the world in a positive way where we are affecting, we have the ability to affect, just tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people through chiropractic care, millions of people. And so that's really what my why is, for sure.
So I have to ask you this, everybody wakes up in the morning and you can say, well, geez, I think I need to go mow the lawn today, or I want to change the world. And you chose change the world.
Yeah.
There's got to be something behind that. So I'm going to go out of order that I normally go. And I'm going to ask you, who's your hero and why? Because my gut is you're driven by something deeper than just changing the world. I know
Yeah.
your dad's I think a medical doctor,
Yeah.
and here you are excelling in chiropractic. Kind of tell, and I don't know that he's your hero, but there's a driver behind you. So I want to dig a layer deeper if you're comfortable doing that.
Of course. And yeah, you can ask me anything. I feel like we're family at this point. So I'm part of the choose a family, of course,
Oh,
so
my Lord.
yes, for sure. So, you're right. Like my dad is my hero. My dad and also my mom, they are really, if I think about who my heroes are, it's them. They believed in me. Like since I was a child, they always wanted me to be my best self. So they pushed me, I had an opportunity to skip a grade. They said, yes, like let's push her to do it. They always encouraged me when I was down. If I didn't achieve something, they helped me out of it. Now they didn't always agree with the chiropractic part in the beginning, but they came around to it and they're so proud of me. And I think it's like my mom, one of the biggest things she taught me is compassion. So she had us watching these movies when we were kids. Like she had us watching all Roots, and she had us watching Schindler's List, and she had us watching all these different movies. And then when we grew up in Kenya, so my family's actually from Kenya, and she would take us to the different places and say there's so many people that need your help. It's our duty to help them. And so she really taught me like empathy and compassion, especially for people who just have less than we do, who aren't as privileged or just didn't get lucky in life, or they just got dealt a bad hand in life. She always showed us those people that we've got to have some thought about them as well. And I love that because, she taught us to accept everybody, and that it's just that we're all human beings. And then my dad on the other side, being a doctor, he's helped so many people. He's probably the smartest man I've ever met in my entire life. I look up to him so much. He's always like reading books or listening to a podcast. It's so funny that when we talk about when we go on family vacations, my dad always has a book. So we'll be at like, in Turkey, this grand like blue mosque, and he'll finish the tour and he's like reading his book, and it's always about patient care. It's always about helping more people. It's never like a book about like sports, and nothing wrong with that. Or it's never a book about, hobbies or anything like that. It's always about the thyroid or fibromyalgia or how to help these, different types of patients. And so because of that, he's always had a following of people who've come to him, and he's always attracted a lot of patients. And I was really lucky because I basically grew up in his office. So, we moved to upstate New York. I was around 12, 13 years old. And then, until my 20s, just working in my dad's office, I got to see the kind of doctor he was. And he's very magnetic. And people just love him and they trust him like family. And so, he's really who taught me how to be a doctor and how to prioritize people over profits.
Yep.
Because the
Just out,
profits will always come as long as you take care of the people. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I agree. Just out of curiosity, what was his specialty?
So he was in internal medicine. He's also done, multiple very high achieving, multiple fellowships in pediatrics. I think he's done anesthesiology, OB-GYN, but he ended up in internal medicine. And then when I went to chiropractic school, you know, we learn all the health and nutrition in chiropractic school. So I would come home and I'd throw stuff out of the fridge. I'm like, you can't eat this, you can't eat that. Like at that point back then, this is like 15 years ago. People were eating margarine. Like there was just like people would eat country crock margarine. It was just like part of it. I was like, you can't eat that. That's like one, molecule away from plastic. And I'd just throw the whole thing out. And they're like, you can't get rid of our grocery. But yeah, so he kind of made a complete 180 because we just kept talking about the holistic lifestyle. And of course, he's so smart. Then he studied Dr. Andrew Weil and Deepak Chopra, and he did a whole bunch of other stuff. So now he does both. He does functional medicine and typical like regular Western medicine too.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us. So you started out as a solo practitioner and built High Point Chiropractic Wellness into one of the busiest practices in central New York. What were your key steps that helped you scale that successfully?
Yeah. So in the beginning, I said to myself, I didn't want to take out more loans because I already had student loans. So I started out just by renting space from a chiropractor. That practice got bigger. I moved into my own location within about 6 to 8 months. And then in the beginning, I didn't have staff. So I just did everything myself. I was the janitor, I was the CA, I was the billing person. So one of the things that sets me apart especially in my coaching is I know everything about a business, about chiropractic business. I can do everything. Um, and then that practice got bigger. I moved it to a bigger location from there, and then eventually bought my building about 10, maybe now it's 12 years ago. And now, it has a home. The building, the practice has a home, and we're always going to be in that spot, but, I think the biggest thing is I think people make that mistake of putting in, I don't know, maybe you've seen this with a lot of practitioners too, but they put in so much, like they take on more and more and more debt just to build their business. And you really don't have to take on all this debt to build a business. Like you just have to start it. You just have to show up. You have to just be there. It can be really small. You can do a micro practice. You can start in a little room. It doesn't have to be some big, fancy, big ordeal, and you spend most of your time out there networking and talking to people and drawing people in. I think that's really what my secret was, is I just didn't take on a lot more expense. I just, I was gifted a table. I started with my portable table in the other room. I didn't have these fancy tables in the beginning. There was a chiropractor in Rochester, New York that was giving away a table and said, and she was like so happy to give it to a new grad, you know, and that became like my first little traction table. And then I had my portable table for the other one. And eventually portable table turned into, you know, like a Lloyd, eventually a Lloyd table, but it turned into a Thule table and worked up there from there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it is. Well, it certainly is a challenge for anyone coming out of school. I practiced almost 40 years, and I finally paid off my student loans. Did so a long time ago, but man, it is a heavy lift coming out of school with that kind of debt. And then if you're talking about going into, a solo practice, like, and I'm just like you, I follow a lot of the Facebook groups, and I see a lot of the young students about to graduate, and they talk about, oh, I'm going to go out and open my own practice and do this and do that, and the unfortunately, what I think happens to a lot of them is they don't even know what they don't know. And, someone like yourself who real figured out how to do all of those things, I think is critical. But it absolutely can be a challenge for a young doctor going out on their own. And I would highly encourage, having done this the wrong way myself,
Mm.
I would highly encourage, students when they come out to get with someone, to be a mentor, to learn the ropes, because otherwise, I mean, a solo practice can really feel like a ball and chain, especially if you're trying to do it all. You
Mm.
don't get the vacations, you don't get the downtime. I miss so much of my kids growing up because I was trying to, to do it all. And in retrospect, I wish I had gone in with someone for a while, gotten things, educated myself into how things really work, and then go and do it. It
Absolutely.
is.
Yeah, or
Uh,
even asking for help earlier, right? Like, I mean, that's what I love about with the coaching. Like, I love coaching chiropractors because it can really cut that learning curve. You know, it took me, my practice at this point, it runs itself. I've got multiple doctors in there, but it took me a bit of time to get there. But if somebody can just teach you, they need to just can cut that learning curve, and you can go about it a lot faster. You save time and money, you know. I just think more people need to ask for help. They need to ask for coaching. They need to ask for mentorship, um, instead of trying to do everything on their own as well, because it can get really hard out there doing everything by yourself.
yeah. So you mentioned that your practice runs independently of you. I think that's probably every doctor's dream, is to have the practice when they want to, not because they have to. What kind of systems and things did you put together for the practice to run like a business and not dependent on Dr. Iram being there? Because that's a challenge.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that you and I are very similar in that, like, it seems like, you have always like hired, it seems like you always hire great people around you, like your team is awesome. I just absolutely love everybody on your team at Chusa. And I'm sure the other people that you've hired over the years have been great too, that, even in your other business and in your practice. So I think one big thing is employees. You can only grow to the level of your employees, right? So most people don't know how to hire the right people. They don't know how to fire. They don't know how to see if this is even a good fit. They don't know how to hire based on what the expectations are going to be. How much are we going to pay this person? Like, all of these things just kind of come out of thin air and people just wing it. And then what ends up happening is the employee's not happy. They want to leave, and then you have to start all over again, as the owner. So I think the team is got to be really, really important. And I think it's tapping into the group brain, and realizing I don't know everything. I have a completely different set of experiences than anybody else on my team, and they have different set of experiences than anybody else on the team too. So I have a meeting every Tuesday at 1:30. That's like that's the time we have our meeting, our team meeting. And I still do zoom in. Now, I don't always have to zoom in, but I like to keep obviously being on top of it. It's a half-hour meeting. And, I tap into the group and I ask everybody about what their opinion is about something that we're working on, or if we have a challenge that we're working on it together. So it's not just like, well, Tahir said to do it this way, Tahir said to do it that way. It's like we came up with it together. So that's why it gets
That
implemented
buy-in.
together. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I like that. I think that's one big thing. And then I'd say the other big system is, I mean, I'm very passionate about working with medical doctors and OBGYNs. So we get about 28 to 30 different OB and MD practices referring to us on a monthly basis. And,
That's
it
awesome.
is such a missed opportunity for chiropractors if they're not working with medical doctors because, and this too, we've had this conversation about working with medical doctors because that is where the sick people are. That is literally where the people are. They may be on Facebook. Yeah, they may be on Instagram. They may be on Google. Yes, they're there too. But they're literally complaining to their medical doctor about low back pain, neck pain, pregnancy, postpartum, like all of the problems that you can solve. And so I'm just so passionate about working with them. And so for me, I always had a new patient problem before I started working with the MDs. Like I was always like having to go to screenings or events and fairs. And, when you're first starting out too, it gets exhausting. Like who wants to spend their weekend schlepping over a table, going to a fair, just sitting in the hot sun, doing spinal posture screening, things like that is just the worst to me. And to me anyway, maybe other people really love it, but it just was exhausting to me, especially after all the time I was already working in the office. And so I said to myself, how can I get it where I can never worry about new patients again? And my associates never have to worry about new patients again either. So it was just going to be this continuation. And I have like a waiting list practice. And so that's where I really started formulating this MD and OB referral program in my mind. And then I kind of tweaked it, figured it out in my mind, and then I, encapsulated it into a system. But that's
Yeah.
one big system for sure.
Yeah. I want to go back and talk about the hiring the right people and getting them to do the right things the right way for the right reason, which is actually part of our core values that we read as a company every week when we have our team meetings. And, you know, what has blows my mind, and because I've heard this over and over again, I'll go to a conference or something and I'll talk to a doctor and everybody complains about their staff. And I'm going, you really are complaining a hell of a lot about your staff. Do you ever think that you might be the problem? You hired them, you trained them, you know, y- and we have to realize that what we end up with is a result of what we put into it. And let's face it, a lot of doctors will hire a staff person and they use the tribal method of training, meaning go watch them do what they do. And if anybody has ever had a CA who is resigning and you think, well, I got to hire somebody, let's have them work 2 more weeks and have this new person shadow them. The worst person to train your new staff is somebody who's got their foot out the door and is already checked out mentally. And it's
Exactly.
and over time you end up getting a copy of a bad copy of a bad copy. I mean,
Hmm.
we know what Xerox machines, copy machines do. It
Hmm.
just deteriorates.
Yeah.
And so not having consistent training and onboarding, I think is why some doctors would say, man, I fired 6 CAs this year. And I'm going, you idiot. And they go, what? I said, if you're firing 6 CAs, the problem isn't your CAs. The problem is in your system of onboarding and training them up. And so over time, I'm known for whenever I interview new employees, I make a statement to them. I want this to be the best. My job is to make sure this job is the best one you have ever had. And they go, wow, nobody's ever said that. And I said, oh, it's for selfish reasons, because I know if it's the best job you have ever had, you don't want to leave. You're going to be loyal. You're going to show up on time. You're going to get the training and embrace it. And so it's purely for selfish reasons. And if we would stop looking at our employees as overhead and extra expense and realize that they are truly the best investment we can make,
Hmm.
but you got to couple it with the right onboarding and the right training. And more importantly, and we stopped doing this years ago, usually you'd look at a resume and you'd want to see what their skill sets were. And quite frankly, I've gotten to the point where I could give a rip, because we can teach most everything that goes on in our office. But what I'm more interested in are their ethics, their character, their willingness to learn. And so it's those non-tangible things that when we go through that interview process that we try to dig out of them. And that really makes a huge difference when you stop focusing on just the skill set and start focusing on the character set,
Yeah.
at least in our experience.
Yeah. And I think, sometimes too, right? Like, even with our own children, sometimes they need other people outside of the family to help them realize something that they need, like they need other skills, they need other training. So again, I think doctors that that invest in their team and get them take them to seminars or get them coaching or get them, you know, the like extra resources and things like that. I mean, it makes such a world of difference because those people are going to be willing to stay and want to work for you because they love the way that they're feeling and when they are working, when they are at work.
Yeah, they're valued. So I know you've built a very successful relationship with the OBs and MDs. For the chiropractor that hasn't done any of that and wakes up and says, you know what, I'm tired of scrapping for the 10 to 15% that every other chiropractor is going after the population that we see. The other 85% are sitting in the MD's office with a condition that most of the MDs can't help, don't want to get involved in, aren't very good at. That's where I chose, to plant my flag. What are the first steps that you recommend that they take to start that type of practice?
Yeah. In the year 2022, there were 1 billion physician office visits. It's nuts. So there's a lot of people obviously all going to the medical doctor, right? Now, the chiropractic world, we have a 10 to maybe 12% utilization rate, right? So we have 330 million people, for example, in this country. 10% of that, 33 million people are using chiropractic. That's great. That's wonderful. Okay, maybe let's even give it 40 million. But what's happening to the other 260 million people? Like, what are they doing? You know what I mean? And so it's really interesting because, you know, if we're not working with medical doctors, I think we're already behind. We're already behind. But most chiropractors, the biggest thing is that they're afraid to approach the MD. And I understand that because if you do approach it incorrectly, if you don't come in a certain kind of way, if you don't have the right language, if you don't understand what their needs are as opposed to what your needs are, they're going to shut you down. They're going to shut you down really fast because they don't care. They have no need for you, you know? And most medical doctors are just trained to refer out to physical therapy. So that's basically like what their modus operandi is, like just low back pain, physical therapy, neck pain, physical therapy, jaw pain, physical therapy. Like that's basically what they're taught. And even in medical school, they're taught that, chiropractic is not safe and there's just all these problems with it. So they've always gone away from chiropractic and going towards physical therapy. And of course, physical therapy is part of their medical system and the medical model. But what about the people that, either can't be helped with physical therapy or they've tried it before, or they just don't simply want to go? They don't even know that there's another option for chiropractic. So for that practitioner that wakes up in the morning, first of all, I applaud them for even wanting to try because it can be very daunting. And, when we teach chiropractors with MD and OB referrals, one of the biggest things is really working on the chiropractor's mindset. Because the things that come up when I ask them, how do you feel about thinking about going to an MD right now? They're overwhelmed, stressed, worried. The things that come up are anxious, scared, terrified, petrified. Like these are all things I've heard before. But if we give them that skill set and we give that, increases their confidence level, and then we give them more and more and more skills, and then they actually go out and do it, and they learn the language that the MD needs to hear, and they do it in the right way. They can really get past that gatekeeper, get a luncheon, be able to explain to the medical doctor exactly what we're doing, and then that just opens up the streams of referrals. So I was really excited because, we both just came back from like the Parker seminars, and I was so happy. I was just on cloud nine because I used to ask my husband this. I was on cloud nine. I just had this biggest smile on my face because in the hallways, like multiple people stopped us and said, thank you so much for your program. Thank you so much for your 8-week course. It has been phenomenal for us. We've got so many referrals from the MDs. We've been able to help them. And they've actually now done things like they've kind of made it their own, right? So we had somebody where they tweaked it and changed it for scoliosis patients that are children that are about to get surgery. So they were able to stop them from getting surgery, bring them into the chiropractic world, and they do some corrective care and now start working on correcting that scoliosis and changing that child's life and getting them away from being cut open to having Harrington rods put into their spine. You know what I mean? Like that's what's exciting to me because you can do it. Like that's what I would tell that person. Like you can do it. You just need the skill set. So I feel like the medical doctor's here, we're here, and I'm like that bridge between, or somebody like me is that bridge between the communication. So the reason we're here is because the communication isn't there. But the closer we can get that communication, the more energy and the more relationship there's going to be between that, because we're on the same page. And that's what the medical doctor, the medical doctor themselves, they don't even realize they have a problem. So that's one of the things that we always want to position the chiropractor to sort of in a very subtle way show the medical doctor that they actually need us. And then the light bulb pops open into the medical doctor's mind too. It's like, oh my goodness, I've been looking for something just like this. You would not believe how many times I've heard that, where they just say that, we've been looking for you. Oh my goodness, like we didn't know who to go to, and I'm so happy you came in. And yeah,
That was something that I experienced early on, and it's a long story of how I got involved in the MD community. Well, I'll just tell you the brief version.
yeah, tell me.
I got pissed off because a hospital and a doctor down the road wouldn't release X-rays or records on a patient, and this was on the heels of the Wilk case settling back in the late '80s. And as a result of that case, every medical specialty had to publish in their journal that their national association was guilty of violating the Sherman Antitrust Act and that it was no longer unethical to associate with a chiropractor. So I literally sent out a 11-page letter, sent it by FedEx, and it opened up, said, "Hi, I'm Dr. Ray Foxworth. You're probably wondering why our chiropractor is sending you an 11-page letter in a FedEx envelope. I want you to know who I am, what I do, what my training is, what I can treat, when to refer to a chiropractor and when to never refer to a chiropractor." And I relayed the experience with about the patient, and it's the patient that suffered in that. Well, fast forward. Well, I got a couple of calls from some MDs who said, "I don't know who the hell you think you are. Don't ever send me anything again." But I got some phone calls from groups like Sports Medicine Group and then from River Oaks Hospital. "Would you come and speak to us?" And I went, "Oh crap. What do I do now?" Because I did not have a coach that was helping me with that. And the thing that helped me the most is just saying yes and showing up.
Yes.
And what I learned, Iram, is that they don't have a clue about what we do or how we can help people. They've heard from their patients, the ones that would admit going to a chiropractor, that we help, but they never knew anybody. And because I was the one that just stood up, said yes, and went to speak to them, man, what a game changer. And I'll never, one of the docs that got this letter a few weeks after it, I got this referral from him. He was a family practitioner. And to refer this guy is 72 years old, a lot of DJD in his neck. And the script was referral to chiropractor, one visit, no manipulation. And I'm going like, okay. And I want docs to understand this. When you get something like that, you have a choice. Do you want to blast him? "Oh, you stupid, you know what? What the hell are you doing? You don't know what you're doing." Or you can say, "Wow, he really doesn't understand what I do. What an opportunity to educate him." So I called him and I said, "Listen, doc, I really appreciate the referral." He said, "Yeah, thanks for sending the letter over." He said, "I know I've got patients that see chiropractic, but I just don't know one personally."
Mm.
And I said, "Well, your script says one visit and no manipulation. You know I'm a chiropractor, right?" "Yeah." "You know that our primary treatment is manipulation?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "What is it exactly you would like me to do then?" He said, "Oh, hell, Ray, I don't know. Just do whatever you do." You know, so you gotta understand it's an uncomfortable and different thing for them.
Yes.
And your ability to communicate with them about what you do, what you can treat, when it is appropriate deferral, and the fact that you're telling them when not to refer really puts you in a position that you're helping them identify the right cases to be able to refer over. And it's an educational process.
Yes.
I could have just as easily blown him off and said, "Oh, that stupid idiot, I'm not going to waste my time with him." But, whenever you get that type of response, but, realize you got more than one choice. You can either react or respond.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I love that. I love that story. That's a really good one. But it shows that, that like you got out of your comfort zone.
Way out.
You have to, and even if you don't know what to do, it's going to come to you because you just took that chance to get out, and you're never going to grow unless you get out of your comfort zone. You know what I mean? Like most people just want to stay small and comfortable, but then complain that they're not getting the results. you've got to just get yourself out there and just try it. You have to just start somewhere.
Yeah.
No, I love
I'll
that.
share one other thing with you about getting out of your comfort zone. Reagan, my daughter that worked with us for a while at Chiro Health, we had an event that we were doing. It was the first time that I had ever spoken to over 1,000 people. And I got it. I mean, I've done a good bit of this, but I was nervous that first time. And I acknowledged Reagan in the back of the room. I said, Reagan, I want you to make a note. This is what nervousness looks like when you're out of your comfort zone. And I mean, you just admit it. And it was so neat because the following week she gave me a lapel pin that says "Life begins at the end of your comfort zone,"
Oh,
and I really cherish that.
I mean, you have to kind of feel that nerve. If you're not feeling that nervousness or that anxiety, you're that means you're actually outside of your comfort zone. Like you're doing something that is pushing your boundaries of what you've created as a little bubble around yourself. Yeah, I love that.
Well, hang tight while we take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. Welcome back to our podcast with Dr. Irum Tahir. So, you provided chiropractic care in underserved areas around the world, like we mentioned earlier. What was your most memorable experience from that, and how's that shaped how you approach healthcare now?
Oh, that's a great question, man. I've been very blessed to be able to travel all around the world. I did I was a extension faculty for Palmer College of Chiropractic for a little while when they were doing their mission trips. And that was absolutely fabulous because then you're teaching students and, you're getting them to be able to see things that they've never been able to see before. So that was really, really cool. But like personally, I have this one case, this one child that I just love. And so last year I had, a young boy that was I was working with the Syrian and refugee population in Jordan where they escape war and they're just, they're living in Jordan. They're living there by permission. So they're not illegal or anything, but they just don't have a lot of access to they don't have, public health insurance and that kind of thing. And so they go to this free clinic, and come in. And so I got a referral. So I go with the medical doctors. That's the thing. When I go to these mission trips, there's no chiropractors on. I've been the first chiropractor that's ever gone, and I kind of pushed myself into this medical group. And so I go with medical doctors and, the first day with the medical doctors, I explained everything I do. Cause the first thing they're thinking is, why is a chiropractor here? You know what I mean? These are like ER physicians, internal medicine, OB-GYN, like pediatricians. And they're like, why is a chiropractor here? And so in our first team meeting, because thank goodness I've been able to articulate working with medical doctors, I can work with all of them at once and help them understand exactly the kind of referrals I'm looking for. And so a medical doctor sends this little boy over to me, and he's an Iraqi refugee child. His name is Yahya. He has PTSD, chronic bedwetting, extreme anger. Just gets into these little fits and then just can't control the emotions and everything like that. And the mom comes in and she brings him in, and I'm like, okay, so let me just check out the situation. And the kid is so cute, but he has this darkness in his eyes. There's just no like sparkle. There's no light in his eyes. You know what I mean? He doesn't smile very much or anything like that. So I assess him. Sacrum is completely jammed. Pelvis is completely stuck. And he's one of these kids that I say, okay, you're going to come back again tomorrow. You're going to come back again. At one point that week, I was seeing him twice in that week. Twice a day in that week. So we were there for about 5 days. There's some days I just saw him twice a day and then I saw him once a day. At the end of the week, bedwetting's resolved. The light has come back. He's literally a different child. He's hugging me. He's hugging my husband. He's hugging everybody. He's just so loving. So fast forward, we go back to the same clinic last year, in December of last year. And they found us again. They found us. They knew that we were there. And he's been doing so much better, but the bedwetting had come back because he didn't have continuity of care or anything like that, And so I go in and adjust him and everything. Now there's a language barrier because we don't speak Arabic and we have no idea. And the mom invites us to dinner at their house. And we're like, okay, well, okay, that's fine. So we go and thankfully our translator was like, yes, I'll go too. So we go out to the outskirts of Jordan. I mean, it is like the poorest area. It's very, the houses are very constrained. There's garbage everywhere. It's just not a good, it's not a clean, it's not really a great area, right? So we go out there, and the cab's like, you want to go all the way out here? We're like, yes. So we go all the way out there with the translator, and I'm never scared because I'm with my husband, and he's so fit. So if anything happens, he'll just take
Yeah, you
care of
have
it.
your bodyguard. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
if he wasn't there, I would never take that chance. I would
Yeah,
never do
when I,
it.
yeah, when I saw him in Vegas, the first thing I did, I went up and I asked him to arm wrestle me, and he wouldn't do it.
Yeah, so he's super fit. Now, if I was going alone, of course, I would never go. And it's me and my translator's a young girl. She's a young medical student. So, but we go into their house, and they have a very simple house. Everybody in the family is living in that house. So all the kids, the children, their husbands, their kids, the grandkids, they're all living in the house. And they'd put together this meal for us. And it was a traditional Iraqi meal. And it had the rice and it had the chicken. And she went and made all of this bread by scratch, like by hand. And it was like amazing. It was amazing. We sat on the floor, we're just eating on the floor, and it was just like one of the most amazing moments of our life. And the little boy, Yahya, he just wanted to sit right with me and Tarek. He just wants to like hold us the whole time. So it just showed to me like the impact that we can make. And that's what keeps driving me to keep doing this work, the humanitarian work. And my goal is to be able to get more chiropractors to come on these medical missions with us. I mean, it's great to go on a chiropractic mission, but really, truly, you really haven't lived unless you've gone on a medical mission.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, for sure. You
being a
just see
part of
totally
it.
different stuff.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your TED Talk, what it was about, because as I said earlier, I think it's had over 500,000 views. Kind of tell me what it was about and what inspired you to put that together.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, you're asking questions that, most people don't ask. I love it. Um, they had approached me to do a TED Talk. And I was like, well, what am I going to talk about? I said, well, you know what? I can talk about chiropractic. I said, well, I looked it up. It's like there's been a lot of chiropractors who've done TED Talks on chiropractic, right? I went in a little differently because I went in with this intention. I said, I want it to be really, really impactful. I wanted it to be about the mind body connection. And then I wanted it to be about the person realizing that they're empowered within themselves to make a change. And so besides chiropractic, for the last 15 years, I've studied the subconscious mind and how the subconscious mind works, which is basically like this massive giant filing cabinet of all of the experiences of our life. And most of those experiences are built from the age of 0 to 6 years old. And so that's what, that's that really imperative time in a child's life that helps to dictate how they're going to behave and their personality and what's right, what's wrong, and that kind of thing. And so I had 10 minutes for this TED Talk, and it was probably one of the toughest talks I'd ever done. You said the talk in front of 1,000 people. That's definitely very nerve wracking, but I was like, consolidating everything into 10 minutes is so
Mhm.
hard. And so I did this talk on another technique I use called Psyche, which is a technique that works with the subconscious mind. And so besides chiropractic, that's one of the things that I do with people. Now, I typically don't do them with patients anymore. I actually work with more practitioners, and I've worked with Olympians, I've worked with entrepreneurs, I've worked with authors, I've worked with billionaires, millionaires, people who are just like stuck with something in their life.
Mhm.
So maybe they're stuck with finishing their book. Maybe they're stuck with being successful in a certain aspect and they want to make a certain amount of money. Maybe they have some trauma to resolve. So these are one-on-one sessions that I do. And I wanted to bring that out into the TED Talk. And so I wanted people to know about what that was because, most people don't know to work on their subconscious or even conscious mind. You know what I mean? Most people are just feeding themselves, which is nothing wrong with it, but they're just feeding themselves Netflix and the fluff. They're feeding themselves cotton candy. So they're not even working on the conscious mind most of the time, and the subconscious mind, forget about it. But the subconscious mind is what's driving human behavior. Absolutely. And so that TED Talk, it's actually, I think, up to like 650,000 views now. It's been really popular because people want to know that they can do something about the patterns they keep repeating in their life over and over. So you talked earlier about somebody that said, well, I've let 6 CAs go. That's a pattern. Like, you have a pattern in your business that just keeps happening over and over. If you have a pattern in your life that keeps happening over and over, ending up with the wrong type of partner, or ending up, with the wrong situation, or feeling like you can't make any money, or whatever the case may be. I actually was referred this client. I'll tell you a quick story. I was referred this client from another coach. So another coach sent me this client, and what had happened to this chiropractor is he had had a patient who ended up, a young female patient who ended up having a stroke on his table while in the office. And
Devastating.
after that point, of course, there's this big, lawsuit and NCMIC and all these malpractices involved and everything like that. But he couldn't adjust after that. He just started shaking. And I worked with him over the course of 2 days, and we're just uncovering so much stuff. And it turns out he had gone through some pretty big life things, relationship things. And at that moment, he was very distracted when he was adjusting her. So he wasn't present, he wasn't focused, and he didn't pick up on red flags and a lot of things. And so we had to resolve that trauma in his mind in order for him to, and then be able to then create what we do want in the mind. And, by doing that over the course of the 2 days, he won the lawsuit. It was all settled. He was able, and he's actually come back even stronger and better than ever. So, it was a big turning point for him. I'm really grateful that that one coach sent that person to me. But the subconscious mind is everything. The mind is everything. It's really what creates, it's sending the frequency out into the world of what we want.
There's a lot of different ways to describe it, but success is an inside job.
Yes.
It really is. And I'm trying to remember if it was Larry Markson years ago wrote a book. Actually, I'm dating myself. I have cassettes of Larry Markson, and it was like in a 12 cassette series. And on the inside, he wrote the note. He says, "Success, it's all in your head."
Yes.
And there's so many other coaches over the years that everybody's realizing the same thing, that it really is an inside job, and whatever's blocking you got to get to that, and then in order to be able to get through it.
Yeah.
So you've already accomplished so much, Irum. I mean, it is simply amazing, more than a lot of people will in their lifetime, and you still got a lot ahead of you. What new projects or goals are on the horizon for you?
Oh, that is a great question. I am working on creating the MD program for pediatricians. Pediatricians are a very tough nut to crack.
Very much.
The American Academy of Pediatrics, um, they discourage, children getting chiropractic care. So I'm working right now on an MD program that we will be targeting specifically pediatricians for, and pediatric workers, people who work with children, and being able to change that mindset around there. So that's a big challenge for me right now that I'm really working through. And then I'm also really fascinated with, so I retired at, about 37, 38 years old from my practice. I wasn't seeing patients anymore. And I started going into the coaching and the speaking even more and more. And, you know, I missed the patient care. I really did. It was something really fulfilling about it. I just loved. And so I started another location out here in the Washington, D.C. area, and I always called this one my play box, because I'm actually drawing in a lot of these complex patients that are not getting help anywhere else. And it's especially with low back and pelvic and SI joint pain, things like pudendal neuralgia, um, coccydynia, like just a lot of different pelvic issues, either if it's prenatal, postpartum, or specifically in women's health. That these women are just living with this pain. Men too, but I primarily see women. And so I really delved deeper into complex pelvic issues. And actually, that was my talk at Parker Vegas, and it was really well received. And I have a whole assessment, analysis, and system and technique around balancing the pelvis in very specific ways. And I've had people who aren't even able to lay prone, like literally just refuse to lay prone over time, even not just because they're acute, they're just even chronic people. It's like, it's just too painful to even lay down face down, because it just puts them into that hyperextension, and they just they just can't do it. They refuse to do it. And so how do you work with those patients and how do you get them relief? And, these are people that have been to other chiropractors, PTs, more massage, stim. They've done dry needling.
Basket case practice.
Exactly. And so for me, I'm really working on that. And so we're just coming up with we're going to do a live event at the end of June around those complex pelvic issues, because I really want people to start helping these people that really cannot get help anywhere else. And I've also found with it, and I'm sure you've seen this with being in practice as long as you've been, working with the pelvis, of course, it's a domino effect. So now chronic neck pain is being resolved. And usually with the pelvis, I'm always seeing like an upper cervical restriction as well. So there's definitely a big connection there.
So I've got some just for fun questions.
Sure.
What's a talent you have that most people don't know about?
Oh my gosh. Well, I hate to keep bringing it back to chiropractic. So I'll say I have two talents most people don't know about. My first talent is I can talk to anyone, anywhere, anytime about chiropractic, and I will have them become a chiropractic patient. So it'll be the coffee shop, it'll be the nail salon, the hair, like whatever, like anywhere I am, they will become a chiropractic patient within a few minutes. I'd say the second thing is that I actually have this talent to be able to, it's more of an intuition, but it's to be able to really tune into a person to see even if they don't say what's wrong, I know. It's almost like, I guess you could say kind of like an intuition or a psychic ability or something. But I know exactly, I'll know what they've eaten. And they're like, how did you know I just had like fatty food or fried food or something? Or, how do you know that? I go into like deep meditations, and then I also create meditations, and I can just kind of come up with them on the fly, the meditation. So it doesn't take me all this time I can just come up with it like right now, for example, again, within minutes. So it just is, I think it'd be a talent that I think most people wouldn't have.
What's the worst job you ever had?
The worst job I ever had, well, I'd say the worst job that I ever had was, and almost also maybe the best job, I was working at the dining hall in college, and I was the cashier. I think I ended up getting fired from it, or they're like, you need to go to a different department, because I would just talk to everybody and then they were like, the line was like so long. I'd talk about what's on their plate, and like, oh, you're eating all vegetables, good for you. And I just started talking to every person, and they were like, you got to get out of this position. They put me somewhere else.
Well, thanks for spending some time with us today, Irum, and thank you all for listening to the ChiroSphere podcast. Please subscribe and share the podcast with your friends, and let us know who you'd like to hear from in the future and what topics you'd like us to cover, and we'll do our best to deliver. Doctors, if you're offering discounts of any kind in your office, you need to make sure you're not breaking state and federal rules and regulations on dual fee schedules, inducements, and anti-kickback violations, which can lead to serious fines and penalties. As a member of ChiroHealth USA, we can help eliminate those concerns by using our profitable discount strategy, which ensures that any discounts you are offering are 100% compliant and, most importantly, profitable. It all starts with a no-cost, no-obligation phone call to find out if we can help you, like we have thousands of other doctors nationwide. Many of our doctors have seen a 20% increase in their revenue and a 50% retention of patients who are part of our network. Over the past 17 years, over 7,000 chiropractors have helped over 4.3 million patient family members get the care they need at a cost they can afford. If you want to increase revenue and retention and practice with more peace of mind, call us at 888-719-9990 or visit our website at chusa.com, that's CHUSA.com, to find out why ChiroHealth USA is the network that works for chiropractic and you. Thanks so much, Irum.
Thank you. I appreciate it.